Just check YouTube's connecting. Something's happening on YouTube. It's looking very dark and black at the moment, but oh, okay, and we are live. YouTube is connected. We're in a good place. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 71 of Thompsin and Other Disappointments. My guest this week, normally, like if you're a regular viewer / listener to the podcast, you'll know that we do this on a Friday night, normally at 7:30, but I was willing to make an exception for my guest this evening. You may have seen him in the pilot for the BBC Three sitcom Jerk, starring Tim Renkow. You may also be aware of him through Angel Comedy's Patreon lockdown sitcom. He's currently in a break in between stints of supporting Patrick Kielty on tour. You may have recognised him from all of that. I know him as a lovable Irish stand-up with whom I used to grace the stage way back in the DAY. Ladies and gents, John Meagher. Woo! John, how the fuck are you doing, man?
Yeah, good, man. Thank you very much for having me on.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's lovely to see you. Lovely to catch up again. You're looking well, looking very handsome, if I do say so.
Thank you very much, man. You too. You look younger than you used to when you were doing stand-up.
Well, you're my favourite fucking liar immediately. Yeah.
No, you looked terrible then. You looked like a man in trouble. So this, I'm delighted, man. You look great.
Well, that's very kind of you. Yeah, I suppose, like, somebody showed me a picture of me from a few years ago the other day, and then I compared it next to one of me now at 41. And I really don't want to admit the magic that going to a gym has had, and more so like the magic that my girlfriend's influence on my diet has had. But it had, like, I feel healthier, and I think inarguably I'm looking perhaps a little bit better than I used to. But
yeah, 100%.
I've given you a little bit of an intro there, John, but I think really interesting place to start would be like from the beginning of your comedy bio, as it were, because as we were sort of just chatting before we went live, I was sort of struck by this post that you put up. It must have been a couple of years ago now, where you were talking about how you and your friend Matt came over, like, no name, you know, like you haven't really done stand-up before, came over with just a sort of dream in your pocket, like, to coin a cliche, and now you're both sort of smashing it. So let's just like wind all the way back. Do you reckon you could take us through like your journey coming over, just doing shit open mic nights, and then like progressing to where you're at now?
Yeah, man. So like I always wanted to be a comedian, right? So literally, if I was a kid and you asked me what I want to do, I wouldn't have told you, but in my head I would have been like, I'd love to be a stand-up. So, yeah. But you know, didn't know how to do it, didn't know what to do, ended up getting involved in other stuff like martial arts and kind of things like that, and kind of went away. And then one of my best friends from home moved to London. I came to visit him, and he lived with a guy called Stu Richards, who Stu, people may know, is now quite a big time producer and has his own company. He is the creator of Jerk and creator and everything. But Stu was doing comedy, and he was the first person I ever met who actually did stand up. So I was like, holy shit, like that means it's possible. And we were just having the crack one night when I was over visiting, and Stu actually put my name down for an open mic. And it was later on, I had to fly back to do it. Like, I was still living in Ireland. So I flew over here and did Jesters. They had a thing in Farringdon. A man from, it sounds like bullshit, but the second that I said my first joke, I was like, this is all I'm going to do for the rest of my life.
That's and I walked. Like, just to interrupt a little bit, but like Jamali Maddox told me a really, really similar story. He was like, when he first tried it, he was like, this is all I'm ever going to do. I was like, fuck, like, it's interesting that you've both got that parallel there. But yeah, sorry to interrupt. Carry on.
No, you're grand. But and it was like obviously very raw, and you know, I didn't know what a light was. I ended up doing 14 minutes. I was meant to do 5. Like, and I was just like, there's a guy waving a torch. I thought that was great. And
like he's clapping. He's like, yeah,
this is mad. They don't even laugh anymore. They just fucking flash lights at you. So I came off stage and rang my friend Matt, my best mate Matt, who we had worked together for years and always, you know, talked about comedy and movies and all. And I rang him. He was living in Newcastle at the time. And I was like, man, we're fucking wasting our time doing anything except this. Like, you've got to do it. And so he then was like, oh yeah, okay. And he signed up. And I think his first gig was the Stand in Newcastle, which was sold out. It's like 300 people or something.
Fuck.
He fucking blagged his way on.
So for people who aren't familiar with comedy and the circuit and stuff, like the Stand is quite a major fucking event. Like, so there's one in Edinburgh, right? One in Glasgow.
Yeah, Edinburgh, Glasgow, Newcastle, and even now it's like almost impossible to get on. You get on, and then you're like, all right, here you're on after Dylan Moran or Kevin Bridges or whoever. They're like, just get on. You're like, oh right, okay. And so that was so me and him then just were flying away separately. I did about maybe 3-4 gigs in Ireland over this about a year. It was just like couldn't get time. And then a friend of a friend messaged me and was like, oh, I heard you were thinking of coming to London. Which I don't think it was. I must have said to someone there's bigger comedy there. And she had a job. And so I just moved to London straight away. And so like in a week.
Cypher crashed kind of thing.
Yeah. So crashed, friend, then got a place and just started hammering the open mics. Like We Are Funny, where me and you did lots of the gigs together.
Yeah.
And it just happened that Matt got a job in like Bishop Stortford or somewhere. So he basically was in London as well. And so the two of us came down and started hammering it. And yeah, like, but since then it's just been, you know, it's really hard. But in the past, like that post you saw that was my first gig at the Comedy Store.
Yeah.
Which didn't feel possible.
Yeah.
You know, every time you get something like that, or, you know, like this tour now with Patrick Keelty is like literally every night is an out of body experience for me because like people from Northern Ireland will know Paddy Keelty's the like biggest comedian ever come out of there. First person really to make fun of the Troubles, and we used to watch him like with the family. You would sit around and watch him, and so now it's like fuck, we're doing 1,000-seat theaters, and I'm sitting, and he's like, "What?" I'm like, man. I'm living my wildest dreams. It's mad. But I still have a job. But yeah, but that's because
are you, as in like you've got a day job on top of like support and stuff? Oh right, okay.
I have a full time, and I'm delighted to have it. Like,
yeah, that's sort of a misconception, isn't it? Because like I think if I came over to see you, like if in the unlikely event that you decided to include Aldershot on your UK tour with Patrick, I would assume, like in watching the support act of a gig like that the person I was watching, they were, you know, professional comedian, agent, that they had like sitcoms on the go and stuff. But times are sort of a bit tough in the entertainment industry, right?
Well, yeah, like so before COVID, I was cutting down. So I was down to basically 2 days a week, and then COVID happened. And I was like, this is madness to be doing this. So thankfully, my place kept me on and made me full time again. So now I'm just tired all the time. But it's not like, it's not unusual anymore. Like Matt is the director of a brewery. Like he runs Lane's Brewery basically. And there's other, like, you know, one of the best comedians in the UK and Ireland is a guy called Chris Kent. I don't know if you know Chris. So Chris is like, James Acaster said Chris is his favorite comedian. Tommy says he's his favorite comedian. He opens for Jim Gaffigan and all. And Chris is an electrician, like worked for Pfizer all during lockdown as well. Yeah. So there's more and more of that where you're just like, you can't, you know, the gig money is nice, but, you know, there's a quality of life like that I enjoy.
Yeah, I suppose the insecurity, especially having come through COVID, and then when you wrap things like, I mean, I don't suppose like European tour, like red tape, Brexity kind of restrictions, I don't suppose that's troubled you yet. But like that's another example of how things are getting harder for.
Not for me, man. I've got that Irish passport.
Oh fuck yeah, of course you do. Do you know what I thought? I thought I lucked out because my mum's from Belfast originally, and she said when Brexit was all really starting to kick off, she was like, I'm going to sort it out so you and your brother will have Irish passports because you have that right, ancestry and so on. And I thought like, oh, fucking amazing. But the fucking rigmarole it's taken, like we've still not got them. It's very complicated because it sort of all goes back to my mum needing to get a copy of a marriage certificate, but they got married in South Africa, and the place that it's kept it's a whole fucking sack of chaos. So I feel a little bit cheated, John.
Well, I mean, look, all I can tell you is the Irish government responds well to cash. So if you've got the cash, you will get your passport eventually. Don't worry.
Wicked. It's good to know. Have you got any contacts there?
I'll give you the ambassador's number, I suppose, but I don't know if he'd do anything for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's sort of where I was at, and I'm not classic. I'm sure you've talked to lots of people who just before COVID, everything was like on a oh, here we go.
Yeah.
Having shit the bed, but now it's good. Like I couldn't really be happier with sort of the way it's going at the minute. Like,
yeah. Do you think is there sort of, or I imagine that there would be two kind of tribes of comedians through COVID and after COVID, where for some it would feel like the drawbridge had been pulled up, and that the pandemic shutting down all the venues or making life infinitely harder for the venues was crushing their opportunity. And it's like, oh, fuck. Well, that's the pipe dream kind of shut for a little bit. And then I think maybe there's some other comedians who maybe branched out into like sitcom-y stuff, like producing their own like online content and that sort of. I know there was a lot of online gigs and shit, right? And I've heard sort of mixed success of those. I don't know if you did any in like lockdowns and stuff, but I imagine like, or rather, is it your experience that there were like, did it egg you on to be a bit more entrepreneurial about your comedy, or were you just like, oh well, that's that over for a little bit?
Yeah, like honestly, man, no. There's a few reasons why. Before lockdown, I had just done a tour as well, so I'd just come off 3 months on the road around the UK and Ireland. And the last ever show in Ireland was a gig that I was on with Jarlath Regan at Vicar Street, which is like Ireland's biggest comedy venue. And that happened on the Friday, and the Saturday was lockdown. Fuck. So like for the first 6 weeks, I was fucking pretty happy with the state of affairs. Like, and then I was doing a lot of writing, I was doing a lot of like stand-up writing, but then it became pointless because initially it was like, we'll see in 6 months, like, yeah, good 6 months off. That was grand. Matt and I actually had got a week of gigs in New York we were flying out for in September. And we were like,
right,
that'll be great. That'll be a great way to come back. Then it became clear that wasn't going to happen. And honestly, I just tried to not go mad. Like,
yeah.
So I was like, the Zoom gigs and stuff, some people were fantastic at them. Like Carl Donnelly was brilliant. But I don't know that it's a skill set that I particularly had or sort of, lazily wanted to do. And that's where my day job helped me a lot, because I didn't have to do them. Like, I'll go to a car park where lads were beeping the horn at you and all. Like,
oh fuck, was that?
Did you see them?
No, was that a new format?
New format. Mark Watson did it, and like, so people would drive in to a drive-in gig, and some of them had up to like, I think I seen one that was 1,000 cars. Wow. Like, certainly over a few hundred for a lot of them. And instead of laughing, they beeped the horn. But like, that's too dystopian, I was watching that and like, if this is comedy, then no bueno. Like,
no, I couldn't. Like, I mean, for anyone that's listening who's sort of come across this podcast via the tech route or via the politics route, like if you're not familiar with like the science of comedy, if that doesn't sound too fucking insufferable, but like there is a science to getting people to laugh, right? So if you smush people all together in a basement, in a dimly lit basement with a low ceiling, and it's not a really baking summer hot day, like you don't want it to be too hot, you want it to be, you know, a comfortable temperature in there. There's all of these variables that you can kind of tick, like box tick, that will infinitely help your gig, right?
Unless there is a pandemic floating around.
Yes,
And
yeah.
the ideal gig is a fucking petri dish, really. Um, it's disgusting in terms of hygiene, but yeah. So like, yeah, and I was lucky in another thing you mentioned, tech, kind of tech. Was I was early on to the mad GameStop stuff that happened
Oh,
last
really?
year. Yeah, where their shares went through the roof, and
Is
so
this
that
fucking hell? Is this where you tell me you've become some sort of investment millionaire?
it's all gone. It's all gone. It's all gone. But it did give me a cushion whenever the shit had hit the fan and we didn't know anything. Um, but yeah, but for gigs was like I went online. I watched one online gig, and the guy who is actually a very good comedian was doing his club set, but he was doing it from his like fucking washroom. So there's like a washing machine behind him, and he was trying to do club gear and all. And I
Oh,
it was so weird. I just was like, I can't be
yeah.
part of this. Like,
I spoke to Lisa Cross about it on in a previous episode, and she was like, no, like some of them are good. Like some of them, she's seen acts on there that she would never have normally seen, and she said it's been really cool that I think that weekend coming up after I spoke to her, she was booked in for some international show. Like it was off in a completely other country, like where she would never have been able to I was about to say expose herself to that audience, so that sounds dodgy. She never would have had a chance to perform for that particular, say, subset of people. So I get that there's pros to it, but yeah, it's sort of similar to what you're alluding to there. I think you lose something, man, like in the physical presence of being in that dark room, low ceiling, being in close proximity to other people with a beer in your hand, and like the excitement of, I don't know, like the music and the lights going down, and like I don't think, for me personally, it could ever hope to be replicated in something like Zoom, you know?
yeah, but I tell you what was great actually was whenever things did start opening up, then you had a lot of places where because they were still they couldn't have the people in. Do you know what I mean? They had to socially distance, so the venue was having a quarter of the people, so they streamed the shows as well, and that was good. And like you know, there was lots of people I seen afterwards who are disabled or for one reason or another can't get out of the house, who started going to comedy shows because they could then,
Yeah.
which was. And I did one of the first gig I did back was at Angel Comedy. They did this thing where it was like basically like an all-star night, and they let a few of us not stars like chip in, and so there was like 15 people in the room, and it was all cameramen or performers, and they had a few hundred people on Zoom, and that was brilliant.
Yeah.
And after it, I burst into tears. Me and John Kearns crying and all. I was like, coming back. We're gonna come back. Like, you know, just that, even the feedback of like 10, 15 people looking, even if there's a cameraman completely jaded who will
Yeah.
never laugh again, that alone was enough to satisfy my rampant ego. Like,
Yeah. Well, I think it's a big thing, man, like to have put all your eggs into the basket of stand up, and to really craft your work around it, and to invest like 2, 3, 4, like many more, like some people do this for what, 10 years, 15 years, hoping that it's going to turn into something. So to put that much investment of your time and money into something, and then a pandemic comes along and fucking shutters all of your venues, that's a huge chunk of your life that's then removed. I don't know what that does to somebody like psychologically, to have their goal and the thing that they've been working towards just stripped away immediately. So it's like, I can see how it would be really then quite emotional when you get like a little taster of it again. You're like,
It's crippling, it.
yeah,
It is because and like you say, I'm not one of the I'm not someone who is like a stand-up and a blogger and a sketch guy or whatever. I was just like, what I do is stand up, which is limiting, and I would have a probably much better career if I started doing TikToks. But all I want to do is stand up.
yeah.
When there was the shaky time of that, where fair play to my missus, like who managed to deal with a fucking overgrown child, like going, it's all gone, it's all gone.
Yeah. Well, I think it's entirely forgivable. I mean, like I was already out of the game largely because fatherhood came knocking. But I was dipping my toe back into it. I was sort of like similar, but not as exaggerated as the example that you're talking about, where a pandemic literally kills it. But it was sort of like I had done stand up for about 5 years, I think it was, and then nothing, because we had our son, and then my son was just becoming sort of like manageable and like less, like I had to be there 24/7. And my girlfriend was able to sort of look after him, and so then I was able to dip my toe back into it, and like I was just starting to get like, oh yeah, like I'll try a little bit every Tuesday, and I'll build up like a brand new 15, and I was started getting these ideas in my head of like, wouldn't it be cool if I just got like a decent set of cameras and just filmed like a really nicely edited a new like 20-minute set, and I had probably about 10-15 minutes worth of material, and then the pandemic happened. And so for me it was like, oh fuck, I was just getting back into it. And then but I think for someone like yourself it probably would have hit a lot harder.
But you like, it's interesting because you were you were mad back when you were the first person I knew was doing like 3 and 4 gigs a night, and like,
yeah, man, I
drive, and that was borderline mad. It
Yeah, it was well, I don't know, man. Like I did this HR course a month or 5 weeks ago, something like that, and they were talking about different personality types. And it's like you're a green person or you're a rectangle person, like all of that stuff. And I went into it really
are those in the same? That feels like two very different different things.
different personality types.
A rectangle. Who came up with that scale?
No, I'm just giving you like silly examples. But like,
joking, of course.
Yeah, but it was like I went into it really cynical, thinking like, what the fuck is this, Scientology or some shit? We like doing personality tests, and I actually came out of it thinking like they've sort of got me banged to right. Like they said, you get psyched by like big bold ideas. You get obsessive about new interests. You get like there's a lot of stuff there where I'm like, fuck, I do like. And I think in that first sort of 2 years of doing stand-up, it was a sort of obsessive disorder, really. Like I was just like, I've got to fucking make something of this, because at the time my office jobs weren't going particularly well, but this was something I felt like I could actually do, and I really fucking loved it. It was so much fun, and everyone I met this is the thing that a lot of people who are not into comedy won't really get, but you would think in the comedy circuit there would be loads of fucking sniping, joke stealing, backstabbing, like big egos and stuff. But my experience of it was actually that everyone was really fucking nice. Like it was so nice to meet like enthusiastic, creative, cool people who you could bounce ideas off. And I thought, like, was that your experience too?
I suppose.
Oh shit.
I would say no. I would say no, but only because like I never really was interested in getting into like probably relationship or friends groups with loads of comedians either.
Right.
So I'm kind of lucky in that the group of friends I had at school, most of them are in London. So
That's cool.
I was like, I had that, and I find not in general, but especially in the early days, like I would say I found quite a lot of people tiring. Like,
Right.
like, I mean, and okay, I don't know. Yeah, I just was happy enough to get out of the rooms a lot of the time, if I'm being very honest with you, because I
Yeah.
think, and I mean, this is like, you know, like I'm older as well. I started older, so I've always felt like I don't have enough time to be fucking around at this. Like, I've got to, how do I get from this gig to the next gig to the next gig to be better and take the opportunities as they come, and and while working the whole time was, so I probably like, and that, I've missed out on a lot of that, and there's a lot to be said for having a clique of very funny comedians as your friends, but I probably just didn't get that. I also don't get people being mean to me, but I think that's because of my accent.
Yeah, I think, well, you come across as quite a friendly, lovable guy, I think.
Yeah,
But then also, like, it's difficult to imagine people being mean to you if you did sort of hot tail it out of the venue. It would be usually, I would imagine, if there was going to be some drama there, it would be by two people who stayed behind late, carried on drinking, and kicked off at each other.
yeah, I never drank either.
Did you not?
No, and I mean, I do drink, but rarely, and
Mm,
so I think I avoided a lot.
yeah,
That
yeah. It's probably helped in a few situations, I suppose. I always used to say to Ashley Hayden, because he would have about like 4 pints, I think. I hope I'm not like misrepresenting him by saying that, but I'm pretty sure he used to have about 3 or 4 pints before he went on stage. And I used to say to him, like, the trouble is with doing that is, like, I'm all for having a beer to settle your nerves before you go on, but I also got it into my head, like, that if you have a beer before you go on to settle your nerves, or three, you're always going to need a beer before you go on stage. I just didn't like that idea that I would always associate being ready to go on stage with having had a bit of alcohol, you know?
Yeah, you're right. Like, yeah, sometimes I do, but very rarely. But yeah, it's not. I feel like it's not a good idea. But also, I'm a huge lightweight because I don't drink a lot. So
Yeah.
1 pint will affect me. It's not like I'm just loose and up there. I'll probably be fucking slurring or trying to like I'm not. So I know to ward that off.
Yeah, yeah. Speaking of picking fights, obviously something fairly big happened in the news last night. A stand-up comedian said something quite tasteless about someone in the audience. I don't know if you've heard about this. This was on a couple of stations today, and the husband got really irate and he walked up to the comedian and punched him in the face.
But did he though?
Or was it a slap? I think it was a slap.
Well, did he get irate though? Because the video I watched, Will Smith bursts out laughing, and turns around, sees his wife, and goes, "Oh no."
Which, look, anyone who's been in a long-term relationship will know that dynamic, like where you laugh at something that you think's funny, and then your girlfriend or your wife or whoever like gives you like shoots you the look, like the judgy side, like don't laugh at that, don't be that guy. I suspect maybe there's an element of that. Like I was talking to my girlfriend about it earlier, and she was saying the trouble is we don't know what Jada Pinkett said to Will Smith in those seconds in between because there's no camera footage of that.
Yeah, I mean, I guarantee you there is somewhere. But you know what she said? She was like, "You're just gonna fucking let him talk to me like that?" Like that's
Mm.
what she said. In classic, you know, every fight in a nightclub. So I work in the hospitality, so like 9 times out of 10, two lads scrapping has started because someone's missus was like, "Are you just gonna let that happen?"
Really? Bit of
Yeah, it's always that. It's always that. As horrifically toxic as that sounds, that is purely the voice of experience talking. Like, so that's what happened. Plus, like, it was a terrible slap. He should be embarrassed about that. The whole thing is just drama kids. That's all it is. And I love it. I love drama kids. They never change. Him, like, him hitting him and then crying about it. Crying about it because he hit someone. Like,
yeah.
what?
And then like I like the idea that I read this. Somebody tweeted it earlier saying that in between every ad break after that moment, then Will Smith was like quietly talking to his publicist, and
Yeah.
someone else was like, I bet he fucking was.
yeah, tis, and everyone just is like, either they're like, yeah, he did what he had to do, or they're like, this is the worst thing that's ever happened. And you're like, can everyone just fucking relax? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's it's so funny. I mean, I'll be honest. I'm not against hitting people when they've earned it. Like,
Really? I can't imagine you smacking someone, John.
oh,
When was the
I,
last time you hit someone? Come on, let's peel this onion.
the last time I hit someone, I can't remember the last time I struck someone. The last time I've like been in a physical altercation was probably 3 years ago
All right.
on the tube. But it's been more like,
Yeah.
yeah, like I I grew up where it's like not a particularly big deal
Yeah.
to that. Like I don't go look for fights. A guy had a hold of a woman on the tube platform. That's where I did. So I choked him. Like I don't feel bad about that.
No.
That guy deserved it.
That's a
You know.
different thing, though, isn't it? That's like the dynamic there is one of defense and protection. I think it's sort of. I have sort of mixed feelings about judging too hard, too publicly about someone like Will Smith, because I don't know what it's like to be married to Jada Pinkett. I just haven't. I don't know how that, like, what control she has over him. Like, I was talking on a chat group earlier, and I was sort of saying, from the context that I'm aware of, and I fully accept and hold my hands up that I don't fucking know everything, but the context that I'm aware of is that she's done the dirty on him, run around having sex with younger dudes, hold his ass onto network television to tell him about it in front of the world, and like that must be a humiliating, fucking hollowing experience.
He did too though.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, yeah.
Ah,
The word is they've got an open thing. Like that's the word. So I seen someone tweet earlier. It was very funny. It might have been Laura Smith. I'm not sure. It was like that slap was for the lad that was riding his missus. Like,
yeah,
like he's like a teapot boiling on the stove.
yeah,
Like, yeah. I think Hollywood's fucking nuts. They're
yeah.
all mad.
But you know what's like? I love like instances like this in their own way are kind of sad because it's like obviously their marriage is fucked, right? And I don't know why they stay together. They've both committed adultery, and if they want to stay together for the good of the family and the kids or whatever, then great. But I also feel like by not actually addressing whatever the underlying issue is, whether it's that they don't fancy each other any longer or if they've emotionally grown apart, by not actually resolving that, what it's doing is like manifesting in weird fucked up situations like this, and now everyone else has to deal with it. It's like
Yeah.
infinitely worse. Now like your dirty laundry's going to come out. It's all over Twitter. Like this is probably the biggest like piss take celebrity news story since like something that Kanye did. I don't know.
Yeah, and I mean he's mental, so you can't really blame him either. But yeah, like I did see Nikki Glaser had a great tweet. It was open relationships seem healthy. Like
Mm,
these things are just, they, it's not health. They cannot be healthy. I'm
no.
sorry, and I mean that's very parochial and conservative of me maybe, but like there's only so much I'm sure you can take of your wife banging other dudes,
Yeah.
or you have to slap Chris Rock. But also, I thought it was like the most embarrassing part of the whole evening for me was that Chris Rock was telling that joke. I was like, what?
Yeah. So
That's like, does he not know that he's Chris Rock anymore?
this is the thing, man. Is like I felt the same actually about Jimmy Carr when he did the joke about gypsies a few weeks ago. I was
Yeah,
like, I wrote a blog about it, and I was saying like, here's the thing, right? I'm a stand-up at heart, erstwhile I may be, right? But I fully respect and love the form, the craft, and I'm gonna have a natural bias towards comedians when they say something upsetting. If it upsets a few people, I sort of look at it like the greater good. Like you have to got to break a few eggs to make an omelette or whatever the saying is, right? So I'm going to side with Jimmy Carr or Chris Rock. But in both these instances, similar to what you're tapping into, I'm like, the shocking thing is that comedians of this caliber would have bothered signing off on a joke that kind of lazy, you know?
Yeah, and oh man, after the Jimmy Carr thing, I got into so many rows with comedians because, and Chappelle is the same.
Mm.
Like, the you get a lot of the, free speech. Can't say anything these days. Like those guys,
Yeah, yeah.
feel like, you know, who leap to people's defense like that, and I'm like, you're confusing offense for a lack of due diligence and those those examples. Jimmy Carr one, I think the Chappelle one, and last night is just shit joke writing. It's just they're just
Yeah.
low bar, like not of the where those guys should be, and I expect more. And fair enough, that's a me, but like I'm not offended. I'm not offended by it. I'm annoyed that
Yeah.
I could see that in any open micer. I'm annoyed that Jimmy Carr did that joke because he's so much better than that joke. And that Chris Rock last night is like G.I. Jane. When did that come out? Like 20 something years ago.
Yeah.
What are
90s.
you talking about? Like,
Yeah.
what's going on? So I don't know. That's where my thing is, and that offense in comedy. And I've seen comedians on who are like, oh great, now I have to worry about people slapping us. No, you don't. Don't.
No. Yeah,
You
I
don't.
can't see anyone. First off, that would mean that people really, really wanted to emulate Will Smith. Like, and he's not, like, no disrespect to Will Smith in that capacity, but he's not one of those celebrities where people are like, I want to be like Will Smith, in the same way that like Eminem was. Like Eminem, people wanted to emulate him. They dressed like him. They bleached their hair like him. But
Yeah.
nobody ever says like, like, oh, who's your favorite actor? I'm a massive Will Smith fan. I just don't think that type of person exists. It's a bit like he's like the Hollywood A-list equivalent of like, and again, no hate, but he's the equivalent of like a Josh Widdicombe in that people like him, they like what he does and his output and everything, but I've never once heard somebody go, I'm a massive Josh Widdicombe fan, or like I love, like he's my favorite,
Yeah.
So I don't think anyone's going to jump up on a stage and hit people because they want to be like Will Smith. And equally, I think most people, and the fact that it's become so salacious, this event, tells you that it's largely, broadly seen as completely unacceptable. So I think it would take a lot for people to be like, yeah, well, he's really broken down doors for me.
Man, people, and more so comedians, love to be victims at the minute. There's nothing better than like,
Yeah.
oh my God, I'm so scared. How can I go on stage now? Because I might make fun of someone's wife and that man might slap me. I'm like,
Yeah.
well, like again, like it's very. As I'm saying this, I sound like an old man, but I'm like you make fun of someone's wife, you might get a slap in the mouth. Like that, that might happen. And there you go. That's
You're so much more laissez-faire and laid back about this stuff. Like if I got hit in the mouth, like, or slapped in the mouth at a stand-up gig for saying something, I think it would ruin my year. Like it would really like viscerally dig into me. I'd feel violated, and like I wouldn't take it as sort of just par of the course. It would really like, I'm such a pussy, John. Like I think it would traumatize me. I might even seek out therapy. I don't know.
well.
You would just take it as like part of like nature of the beast.
Everyone should do therapy, but I think like if you're no luck, I just think like you talk like it was a shit joke that he made about his bald wife. Some like obviously it's mad that he did it, but still is like, yeah, sometimes you're gonna get slapped for that. Like it's fine. Chris Rock's gonna be fine. He was fine immediately. That's where I was like, I was very sad. Then I was so impressed because I was sad he made that joke, and then I was so impressed that it took not a second out of him. He just immediately went on, and I'm sure he had 50 things to say that would have fucking ruined both of them, and he just chose not to. But I'm excited to see what Chris Rock does next. But yeah, my man, that offense in comedy is that is a big. That's a bit. I'm sure you talk about that, do you? The people who are like, you can't say anything these days.
Yeah, I mean, the cliche is that people who say you can't say anything these days can never answer the follow-up question, which is like,
What do you want to say?
yeah, what is it that you really want to say that you're not allowed to say anymore? Right.
It's the N word.
Pretty much, yeah. They want to say something really shitty. And like, here's the thing, like you will know this more than anyone, I'm sure. But the thing with comedy is like, I go on TikTok a lot and I do political stuff, but I also do some like stupid funny things. And sometimes I get comments back from people saying like, you can't talk about that stuff, either because I'm a white guy or because like today I was doing a thing about Will Smith, and somebody said you can never talk about disability in comedy. And here's the thing, right? You can talk about, I think fundamentally, you can talk about any subject, literally any subject you like. You could use that in a comedy routine, but you've just got to be intelligent enough and sensitive enough to learn how to like pepper the build up to it and to get people on your side and to couch it in between two other bits that, you know, like there's a technique and there's a form and there's ways that you could take a subject that's incredibly uncomfortable to listen to somebody talk about and use it, not talking about that or like laughing about it or dismissing it or anything, but you could just use that topic as a metaphor for like talking about something else. And then you're not like so you can use these things absolutely in different ways in comedy. Nothing I think should be off limits.
Yeah.
I don't know where you stand on that.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's always nonsense. Like I was at a gig not too long ago and we're in the green room, and the green room after there's me and two acts that have been on, and this conversation comes up, how scared they are to say anything on stage. You can't just be free anymore. You can't do anything. One of those acts in his set does an impression of a gay guy just so he can touch women's tits, right? And the other one, there's a woman, does a joke about giving people AIDS. And I was just like, that was like, what is it you can't say? Like, both of them killed. Like the bit, they were an example of what you just said. There, if I told you, oh, we've got this person up, he's going to do a joke about a gay guy, and this one's going to do a joke, you'd be like, get them out of the building. They should never work again. But they were proficient enough to have written it in a way that it wasn't just a bang on this X, Y, and Z. But like, that is the thing where you're like, you know, you'll see people and they're just like, oh, we can't, you know, I don't get booked anymore because I make these jokes. And I don't really know anyone who I think that is true of. I know that Leo Kearse, who's kind of fairly right wing, works with GB News, would say that, and maybe him. Well, Leo's a fantastic comedian. Like I absolutely disagree with the majority of his politics or whatever, but his comedy's gold. So if he's not booked, it's because of that. But generally, the rest of them is that it's just not very good.
I think that's it. I think it's a nicer story to tell yourself that you were marginalized and professionally persecuted for your political beliefs, rather than the awkward, inconvenient truth, which quite often I imagine is I just wasn't very good. I know nobody really wants to say that, or to take the ego hit of being like, I really fucking tried at stand up for, let's say, 3 years, and I just couldn't progress in the same way that other people. It's just a nicer thing to then tell yourself, isn't it? Like, they won't book me there anymore because I talked about X and Y. But it is complete fucking nonsense. You're right.
Yeah, and you know, I'm a fan of Bill Burr's side on that, which is, you know, are you killing so hard every night that people don't want to follow you? And that, you know, there's your one. Once you can say that is true, once you can say I am the best on every professional bill, like Michael McIntyre can't follow me, then I'm like, okay, you should be famous. So now we need to look at why that's not the case. But like I was hosting the other night and Ian Stone closed, and that might have been the best thing that I've ever seen. Ian Stone. He's like, and you know, he's a very well regarded comedian, you know, has done lots of stuff, does bits on TV, but he's not on TV every night. Are these people better than him? No way. Like Jeff Innocent should be on Live at the Apollo every week, and he's old, so he's not Like, but it's I think yeah, I think these guys just need to have a word and with that, which is like put the work in.
Yeah, it's putting the work in, but I also feel like uh there's a deficit of emotional intelligence sometimes with some acts, where let's say you go on stage and you do a routine that uses sexual assault as a metaphor, right? Now you're not laughing at sexual assault or victims thereof. You're just saying, like, you're talking about something else and you're like, God, it's like being sexually assaulted by the fucking Pope or something, like you're using it as a way to convey how you feel about something. And the crowd laugh, right? Then you've got like three open micers waiting to go on, like maybe you're hosting and you've got some like middlers or something. And they hear you do that, and if they don't have the emotional intelligence there and they just take that at face value or something close to face value, and what they take away from it is, oh cool, I saw John do this gig the other night where he did a joke about sexual assault, so I guess that's cool. And then they go off to like Jesters or somewhere, do a joke literally about sexual assault, and the room is silent, and then they don't get booked there again, and then they go away and they're on Twitter or writing blogs or something going like, yeah, they can't fucking handle me because I you can't say anything anymore. I think there's a lot of that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that happens, but those guys, I think we're never going to get anywhere anyway. I do think people, like, I'm very lucky, and we both are lucky in that, fair enough, there was camera phones around when we were coming up, but not like, wasn't as ubiquitous, people putting up their clips and all. So there was a degree of, you could say, you could make mistakes. You could make those mistakes and be fine, whereas now it is harder. But, and that is unfortunately the only, like in cancel culture, the only people who I can actually see that get cancelled are like open micers. Like, those guys get fucked whenever they do that stuff, as opposed to, just people going, hey, you can't do that. What are you doing?
Is there like in terms of, because I'm a little bit out of the game, so, but when somebody does go up on stage and they say something really shitty, and let's say racist or homophobic, or is there a culture now of like in that world where people do camera phone, like they sort of like spy on the shitty comedian and then upload their clips and go, look at this racist motherfucker, and then that's it, they're cancelled? Does that kind of stuff happen? Or
I'm trying to think of one recently. There was a guy recently who got called out online for doing anti-trans stuff, but there was no video. It was just somebody in the crowd who got offended and left. But like, it does happen because the real, the truth of the cancel culture thing is that if you like powerful people, it doesn't affect them at all. I mean, I won't fucking defame anyone here that we know. There's mega acts who, if they weren't famous, people would be saying that person has sexually assaulted multiple people. You've seen it with that guy, that actor who just all 20 women come forward, and it's just the case goes away. Like, those guys, nothing happens then. But if you don't have that behind you, the machine behind you, you're kind of, you're out.
Do you mean, wait, am I allowed to name the actor? Or are we back into legal?
Like, that was in the paper. Like, he I just couldn't remember his name. But yeah, so like that case isn't going forward.
Yeah.
Did he not do it? I don't know, but 20 women seems like a lot. So, and I imagine there's probably more, but like,
I vaguely remember his response to it. So this is Noel Clarke. I'm just going to say it because it's incredibly unlikely that he watches this. And
isn't it, if he sued you?
And yeah, it's been all over the papers and stuff. So, but yeah, well, I remember when that came out, and I think his response to the allegations at the time was a classic case of, and I fucking hate it when they do this. Like, they say, I refute these allegations completely. They're all made up. It's all fantasy. They're all fucking liars. And then they pivot and they go, but, I've not always been an angel, and sometimes I've misread the signals, and I'm working on being a better... It's like, well, which fucking is it? Like, are you running around, like, grabbing people's asses and putting your faces in their boobs? Or, have you been a fucking angel the whole time?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, but that's where I was thinking that today of like, that's where I'm in full favor of people getting punched in the mouth.
mm,
Lots of comedians should get slapped in the mouth. Less so now, but God, the stories you hear, like, the stories that I hear from women and stuff is mad.
yeah.
There was for years, hopefully it's less so now, but there was a different circuit going on. And on one of those circuits, you were assaulted or at least made to feel very uncomfortable quite a lot of the time. Like,
Yeah, like that's a huge thing, isn't it? And as you've just said, like I don't know if it's got any better. I suspect it probably hasn't. I think whenever you've got a lot of men in a room and a lot of alcohol, which these venues invariably do, uh, and one or two of the men in there have got a position of power or influence, and you've got, sometimes very attractive young women trying to get stage time and stuff, then there's some very very questionable behavior that I've heard that's gone on. But it's like anything else, isn't it? It's a bit like banking, football. Like take a big group of men with some sort of influence, and the laughable thing about it really is that a lot of these individuals actually don't really have an awful lot of power or influence, but they've got
yeah,
just
rarely,
enough. Yeah.
but it's grim. Anyway, sorry, I took us on a tangent there.
Sure. Yeah. No worries. So yeah, the last question I've got for you really, because I'm conscious of time. Don't want to eat up all of your Monday evening, and you'll, take you away from your cabbage and what the fuck was it you were cooking?
Cabbage and bean and onion stew.
That sounds yum. Uh, but yeah, I don't want to keep you from it. But last question. So like we touched on your bio at the beginning and your impressive trajectory as a stand-up. Where do you like? Are you just sort of on a romantic journey as a stand-up comedian, or do you have a specific place where you're like, I'm gonna fucking do that, or this is where I want to get to?
There's a few things that I want to do. Like I want to, you know, I've come close to having some sort of decent things in the media and stuff. And so I want to have like a stand-up special, obviously that goes out in the main, paid for by someone else. There's places that I gig,
Yeah.
I want to do. I'm doing these amazing places with Paddy Keelty at the minute, right? And it's fantastic, but I want to do them with my name on the door.
Yeah.
So that's the goal for me is do that. Do Vicar Street in Dublin, 1,200 people, like one of the best rooms that you're ever going to be in. That where you're, backstage and you're seeing the posters of everyone else who's done it, and that's what I want to do. Whatever I can do to be a full-time comedian, that's sort of what I want to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned like New York earlier. So is that like a recurring thing? Do you think you'll go back over there and do some sets?
Yeah, 100%. So I'm dying to get over there, and at the minute there's quite a lot of Irish people go like at the minute. A lot Irish people have always went over there. Irish comedians are going over there now, and doing places like the Stand and the Comedy Cellar, and all that stuff. And you make because you know this the stand-up world is so small. You just can't imagine there. Like the more you jump up a gig, you're doing like with people who you've seen on TV for years, and then you jump another one. Like I've got to know a guy, Tom Rhodes. I don't know if you know Tom. Tom's like
No.
one of the first people who got a major development deal in America. Had his own sitcom. Has traveled around the world for 20 years just doing stuff. He's amazing, and like he's asked me to open for him and stuff. And there's things like that where there's opportunities there to be taken, and I feel like if I had a list, I want to do the Comedy Store in LA,
Yeah.
big. Like we all want to do that, be on that stage. That's massive. But that's it, really, man. Everything is all systems point to that.
Are you gonna do you think you'll do like Montreal or Edinburgh or
I don't know, Edinburgh. I mean, we could probably do a whole podcast on this itself. I have got major issues with Edinburgh because I think all it does is increase the class disparity in comedy, which is already fairly big. for people who can afford to do it and people who can't. Like you said earlier about the people in lockdown, you were talking about comedians maybe getting to a thing and then just quitting because it's not for them.
Yeah.
That didn't happen. People who could afford it, you
Mm.
know. But I know people who quit because they were like, I can't afford to do this anymore, and now need to work. And you just lose a swathe of really interesting voices that we just don't hear enough of. So Edinburgh, I know I was chatting to someone recently about Edinburgh, and they were given their breakdowns of the room they're in. So they're in like a 50-seater room, right? And if they sold out every single day for the month, they would only owe 5 grand.
Fuck.
Like, how can that be?
Yeah.
I've you mentioned therapy. I've been in therapy too because I have had a problem of I get into meetings with people. Like I just said, I've almost got some big things. What I didn't say is I torpedoed those meetings by ending up like telling people what I thought of them, which you shouldn't do. But like in Edinburgh in particular, Edinburgh is set up for people who can afford to lose 10 grand in a month, or you're eating bean stew for the thing. Like, so I hate that. And even I had a meeting with someone recently about putting a show on in a venue in London that I really want to do. Like, it's a venue that is a signifier to other people. Like, oh, this guy's on a correct path.
Yeah.
And it hadn't crossed the programmer's mind that I wouldn't be in Edinburgh. And I was like,
right.
Sure, I'm here. Like, come. They were like, we'll go and see you in Edinburgh. And I was like, come see me here.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's a lot easier in Edinburgh because we have this. And I was like, yeah, okay. Well, give me 5 grand then.
Yeah.
It is literally that.
This is the thing. Like, people don't understand how fucking like financially ruining it can be to go up there because, and like you mentioned a minute ago about even if this person sells out 50 seats every fucking day for the entire month, well, how realistic is that? Like, who have you got flyering for you? Have you got some sort of PR effort behind you? It's just like I did Edinburgh for 10 days 1 year, and I came away feeling quite disillusioned. To the point where I was like, I would rather run my own thing in London. See, this is the thing. There's like big, bold ideas. Like, oh, I'll start my own thing. Like, it's fucking ridiculous. But I think I would rather, and I would respect your route more greatly. I think of get yourself the theatre in London, get people down to your own thing. Would be quite cool. But yeah. So when is that still happening, or did you tell those people what you thought of them as well?
Well, it's quite good because the only time, in recent history, because you can say things like, I come from a council estate. I'm not giving someone 8 grand to pull my pants down. That now programmers can't just say no. So they will come and see me in London. But it's like, to have to even do that is bizarre.
Yeah. But it's a different world, though, isn't it? It's the whole sort of privilege thing. To them, those producers or commissioners or whatever have largely, I don't know exactly who you spoke to, but they come from a different walk of life where they can afford to just flush 10 grand down the toilet, or their uncles lend it to them, or like they've got access to capital. And so when you say that you're not going to Edinburgh, they're like, well, why? Like, then I don't think they're being genuinely like cunty to you. I think they're just like, I don't understand why you wouldn't,
I think it's the mix of not just whenever they say why, it's my furrowed brow as I launch into into a rant like fucking Wolfie Smith. Like, yeah, I've got. Look, if you can afford to, it's great. I also think that the benefit of Edinburgh is that you get to do a gig every day for an hour or whatever. And I totally understand that. But I also understand that days off are important and having a life is important. And I think, otherwise you end up being one of those guys who only talks about the stuff that happened at a gig last week.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like, you know, in a perfect world, I would go up and not worry about the cash, but um, I can't allow someone with an RP accent to do that, to have that control on me.
Yeah,
I
fair
just need
enough.
I just need to stop calling them all cunts to the face. That's like that's where I'm. You know, I'm a work in progress.
Yeah, yeah, fine. And that's where the therapy came in, just to be clear.
Yeah.
Cool, man.
Oh, I'm not even joking. I was about to be given a quite a big thing, and so the meeting started with, "This is amazing. We're so happy to see you," and it ended with me going, "Everything that you've made so far is terrible, though. So what is like so stupid, so stupid?" And yeah, so I had to go and get
But
professional
then,
help.
right, there's a beauty in that though, isn't there? Because it's like,
Not, there's not. There's
well,
not. I know
obviously
that
now,
on the outside there is.
yeah, well, like what you're doing is you're speaking truth, right? So, I mean, I assume it's true. Like, was genuinely everything that they'd done had been terrible?
Yeah, it was terrible. It
Right.
was terrible. But like, you know, but the way to do that is to make good stuff. You know, to change, like to bring them stuff that is good and get in there.
Yeah.
You know, and you know, like Stu Richards is a great example who we mentioned earlier. So Stu created Jerk, created it after he knew Tim Renko, got the pilot made, got the series one made, and was landed with another producer because he'd never done anything before. And um, I mean, I don't know what's out. Let's just say he was no longer there in series two, and so Stu made his own company. He just formed his own company, and was like,
Mm.
"Well, I'm just gonna fucking do this differently and make good stuff." And now he makes a lot of the Rosie Jones shows. And
Okay.
Stu's got disability as well, so he's got like his whole company. I think is 60% of people in his company are disabled. Like, it's massive. He's changed. Like, he has changed the game in doing that. Um, and he did that by not calling people cunts.
Well, I mean, I like your way better because like
Why?
I
Because it's not your career.
yeah, well, it's more entertaining for me, I guess. You know, selfishly, it just works better for me. But but I think there's genuinely like there's something to be proud of, and to know that you just spoke truth to power in a weird way. You know, like you weren't really feeling this stuff. I suppose there's an argument, you know, for tact and to
Yeah.
communicate well with these people.
Here's the thing: is it doesn't affect them, mate, when you do
No,
that. So they don't go away thinking, "Oh, maybe that guy's got a point." They go away thinking, "That guy who, like, we were going to give a working class guy an opportunity, but these guys can't hold it together. They're so annoyed. They're so angry." You know, so it's like sort of realizing that you're bringing more to the table.
yeah, yeah.
I like, oh, so stupid, so
I'd
stupid.
I'd
But I
hope
don't do that anymore.
I'd hope they wouldn't be that sort of ignorant about it, and instead they would just look at it like, you know, one of them asks the other one, "Oh, how did that meeting with John go the other day? That guy you said was really funny," and then the other guy goes, "Oh no, it's you know, bit of
He
an
said
attitude problem."
everything we made is dog shit. So I think we won't be moving forward.
But see, even the fact that we're laughing about it now, I'm just like, I fucking love it. Like, and then I think, do you know what? In 5 years' time or 10 years' time, where you are playing the Comedy Store in LA, or you know, out on like with your name above the door, you'll think back to that stuff and you'll be like, yeah, man. Like, I told them that they were cunts. I told them that all of their shit wasn't working. Now I'm here. You know, there's an integrity piece to that, and I'm feeling it. I'm here for it.
Well, that's very nice of you to say, Ed.
Well, you're very welcome. Listen, man, this has been lots of fun. I wish you all the best with the rest of the tour, and hopefully at some point we can bump into each other for a beer.
Where,
And
where Aldershot?
yeah,
That's
man,
got an RAF base, so I don't think we'll be there. But where is that near?
Guildford and Farnham. No,
Strike, striking out.
yeah,
Anyway, yeah, but hopefully we cross paths again soon.
for sure. All right, mate. Take care. Catch up soon.
Thanks, man.
Cheerio. Bye.